Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here. Jolene and I moved to College Station on August the 15th, 1969. And I'm here to tell you it was different. The road to Houston was 2-lane with no shoulder. And the speed limit was 70, but they would give you 75 plus before a ticket. So it was fast driving in the old days. There was no campus on this side. The extension service met every month, and we met in a room about half the size of this room. That's how few of us there were. But there was a county agent in every county in the state of Texas. Some of you guys may not know it, but I know some of you know. Bill Welch knows, and Monty knows about the deal, but Dorothy C. is here. I want to make sure everybody knows Dorothy C. She got here 3 years or 4 years before I did. So she got here way ahead of myself. And I think, I don't know, did we quit about the same time or about the same time? So we both we spent all of our professional career at Texas A&M. I was, hired, not interviewed. I was literally hired at Florida. And Dr. Story, who some of y'all, I would dare say that only 2 or 3 people in here actually knew Dr. Story. So we use Dr. Story all the time, but he was the pecan man, and Dr. Story, as Bill will tell, he was a lot more than just Dr. Story. He was really some big old guy, 6'4", and he didn't walk. He ran everywhere, and he was a go-getter, whatever. Well, anyhow, Dr. Story was insistent on me coming to Texas, and my wife is from Texas, so that was a big part too. So we ended up in Texas. So we spent our whole career. It's been fantastic. If I had it to do all over again, I'd do it all just the same. I don't know of any instances in my career that was negative. I was doing research on these herbicides, and I spilled this herbicide on me, and it was burning me. And I had to strip off naked and jump into Guadalupe River before I burned to death. And then my friends threw my clothes in the river. And as I came out of the river with nothing on, they started blowing the horn so people driving by could see me. So that was not a good day. Maybe there was another bad day. If it was, I can't remember. So anyhow, that's enough. That's me on the left. That's my daddy on the right. We were citrus farmers below New Orleans and Plaquemines. A little unusual about my daddy. My daddy never went to high school. He quit school in the 7th grade, but he did graduate from college. Now, you can't do that now, but in the old days, it was possible for you to not go to high school. Don't want to waste time with high school. You get a job, but you could go to college. So he went to college. He graduated from college. He became a county agent. And we had a small 3-acre citrus orchard. We grew satsumas. We were below New Orleans. Up at the top of the picture is the yellow part is the city of New Orleans. And then as the Mississippi River runs to the Gulf of Mexico, there's only a narrow strip of land, 200 yards. You can walk on the ground. Then there's a canal and a levee. And then when you go on the other side of the levee, it's all the white stuff that you see is basically marsh and swamp. And some people could walk on it, but most people couldn't. You can't walk on it. So that's what's right. Now, all the way through college, I worked down here at the mouth of the Mississippi River in the oil field. It took me 7 years to get a bachelor's degree because they paid too much. It's terrible, but here I am, a 19-year-old person making more money than my mother and father, both college graduates, making more money than my parents. And they both told me, oh, don't go back to college. You don't need a college degree. Just stay where you are. And guess what? I probably would have been, financially, I'd have been a lot better off. But we went back to LSU and we got a BS from LSU and a master's from LSU and then came over here. I spent some time in, y'all don't know about Vietnam, but there was a war in Vietnam. And if you were a certain age, if you didn't get it, you were going to Vietnam. So what I did is I signed up for the Navy. And after I signed up for the Navy, I was walking out the door. They said, have you thought about the Coast Guard? I said, is that military? They said, yeah, they're just like us. They said, they're the next office. So I went to the next office and I signed up for the Coast Guard. The next office was the Air Force. I signed up for the Air Force. So I did not want to go to the Army because the guys in the Army were the real deal. They were getting shot at. So anyhow, the Coast Guard notified me in 1 week. So I ended up in the Coast Guard, and I spent 16 years in the Coast Guard, and it was a fabulous day. We were on a Unimac, and I advanced all the way through. I was an engineman, and I went to 2 engineman schools, which helped me later in life. You learn how to start a lawnmower or even repair a lawnmower or do an engine. But anyway, that was a good deal, and we had 2 young ladies, and we decided that we didn't need the Coast Guard, and so I got out after 16 years. This is my father-in-law. He lives in McLeod, Texas, which is just south of Texarkana, and we grew every kind of horticultural crop with him. It was fabulous soil. So I also had, I'll show you our peach orchards. I had a peach orchard at LSU. I had a peach orchard at my mother's house. I had a peach orchard at my mother-in-law and father-in-law's house. And then we had a peach orchard here at College Station. Dave Burns may remember we had a peach orchard. Let me tell you something. If you're in horticulture, don't mess with pecans or vegetables and stuff like that. Go peaches. $80,000 I paid for one child's 100% of her college with 2 acres of peaches. So peaches are fantastic. They taste good. And we sold them in these little half bushel baskets. Then we got tired of buying the $1 we were paying for the little basket. So we started just selling, bring your own 5-gallon bucket and the same price. So we've sold a lot of peaches and enjoyed it. My major professor at LSU was a gentleman by the name of P.L. Hawthorne, who was a peach breeder. And he released 2 varieties that were phenomenal. Harvester, which was the #1 propagated peach, I guess maybe in the nation, but for sure in the South. And then he had another low-chill peach called La Feliciana, and they were both outstanding guys. And he was a real good guy. Now, I want to tell you guys, I might tell you funny things and I might laugh, but before I told you, I may end up crying before. This guy, he was a real deal for me. Okay, we came to Texas. Y'all don't know this guy, the lady in the middle here. That's what Dorothy looked like when do you have this photograph, Dorothy? Oh, she has it. Okay, she did not give it. Copy it. But anyhow, Dorothy was here and we've been here the whole time together and it's been a fantastic ride. This was the size of the horticulture department in 1974. So we had quite a few guys and some of them were world famous. Some of them are just, like the rest of them, just another guy at the office. But anyhow, this is Benton's story. He was, like I said, a big old tall guy. He ran the Texas Pecan Growers Association from an office in his home for, I would say, 35 years. And eventually the pecan growers hired a full-time executive director, and Dr. Story relinquished that job. And he was the #1 authority in the world on zinc. And zinc is unique in pecans. The pecans can pick up all elements from the soil, but it does not pick up zinc. Now, all other plants get zinc, no problem, but pecans for some reason. So we have to spray zinc onto the foliage, and Dr. Story was the pioneer of foliage spraying zinc. Then he got into other compounds later along the line. The other man that I worked with was named Bluford Hancock. He was extension horticulturist. He was not a technical person, but when it came to delivering a talk, especially now, it's hard for you guys to realize this. There were not laptops, there were not computers. I mean, computers didn't even exist. Everything was done on the telephone. And Bill can remember, he had, I mean, Paul Harvey's voice, was not as nice as Bluford's. And of course, when somebody met him later, they'd come to Dr. McEachern later and say, well, I met that Hancock guy, but he didn't look anything like I thought but his voice was fantastic. And so he did a whole lot of his work on the voice. And he did do one thing, the pecan inlay bark graft. Bluford, we have a little bit of a conflict in, let me just give you a little bit of story on propagation. You can grow cuttings. Pecans do not root from cuttings. You can bud. Budding is okay. You can whip grafting, okay. But Texas and grafting pecans is very, very difficult. And over a period of some 15 years, the USDA and Fred Bryson at Texas A&M developed the Texas method inlay bark graft. And we were finally able to get up to, 80, 95, 90, 95% take with grafting. If you don't know how to graft and you start with pecans, it's going to be, a terrible thing. Monty and I grafted a row of pear trees out at the pecan orchard, 100%. And we were not being, I looked around and what were you using? I don't know. Monty is good about doing stuff. We weren't using, we ran out of plastic and aluminum foil. So we were using paper and bags. And guess what? 100%. Not that way with pecan. Pecans are very difficult to graft. And this man was the champion of grafting pecans. All right. Now we're going to talk about these guys. These three men, especially the man in the middle, probably affected my personal career more than anybody else. They are the #1 pecan growers in the world. They have 3,000 acres at Las Cruces, and I don't know how you say it, they're benevolent. So they supported our program for 50 years. And they will continue to support, and whoever is, running the department later, Mike, they pay everybody's salary comes from these guys. They are really the main, and they give a lot of money to New Mexico State, but they have a special appreciation for the pecan program at Texas A&M, and we appreciate all they do for us. And that's the way they do. I've never been a big friend of giving the money to the department head. And for Dan Lineberger's department, I took my money to the foundation and I put it in the foundation. And if you needed money, they'd send it over here a little bit at the time. I'm not encouraging other people to do that, but that's the way we did it. Here is another man. This man gave me a whole lot of money for a long period of time. He still is a fantastic pecan grower. He's got 2,000 or 3,000 acres at Fort Stockton, at Richmond, and other parts of the state of Texas. This man was the father of satellites. He had the first rocket launch satellite with the United States. And he was working for a company that did it, and his boss got sick and had to take leave. This man never went to college a day in his life. And he started running the company. And it turns out he was running the company better than his MIT type predecessor. He bought the company. He had his 21 satellites at a time, and every one of these satellites is leasing to, one satellite can handle more than one customer. And I can't tell, I do know his net worth was only 800 million. And I was talking to him and he says, I'm really disappointed. I wasn't able to get everything I wanted together. And I says, well, I think 800 million is pretty much. He said, yeah, but I really wanted to make $1 billion. But he never did become a billionaire, but he did good. And the main thing about it, he helped us a lot along the way in getting our program together. Now I want to talk to you about some of the growers and some of the stuff that we were able to do with pecan growers. When I went to work here, Bluford Hancock was my boss, and he said, okay, Dr. McEachern, he says, you're young, hotshot, and, only all us that know Bluford, he was real boastful kind of guy. And he always talked real strong about his stuff, but he always kind of, low, you understand. He said, you're going to have to learn everything. You don't know anything. I'm going to send you to a farmer at Seguin, Texas, who knows more about growing pecans than any person on earth. And I said, well, I thought you were. He said, you and Dr. Story? He says, no. He says, this is Hugo Pate. So I went one day a month for 2 years to this man's farm, and we'd have lunch together. We'd go fishing together. After a while, you've done all the pecan stuff, but I still going down there anyway. And he taught me a tremendous amount about growing pecans. He graduated from with a terminal degree from Blinn at Brenham in 2 years. And that was his college education. And then he was the manager of a furniture store, but he had a pecan orchard and did a fantastic job with it. His soil was about, it ranged from anywhere from 7 feet deep of topsoil, not soil. He had 7 foot to 20 foot of topsoil. Now, the other thing about his pecan orchard was the river ran under the orchard. And we don't realize it. I've told Mike about this many times. Out at the Brazos Bottom, the river, where I was raised in Louisiana, it was on the banks of the Mississippi River. Our house, JoJo, we got married, and the first night she spent the night in our house, she heard this sound, boom, boom, boom. What is that? And I said, it's an ocean liner on the river. And so she goes to the window and she has to look up. It was empty and it was riding high. She had to look up. The thing could fall down on our house or whatever. And the river is a mile wide, and as far from here to the back wall, it's 150 foot deep. And Bluford takes me down to the Brazos and tells me, it's a big river. Now, Bluford exaggerated, but the thing about the Brazos is it goes all the way to the higher land at Snook. But in Texas, all the rivers are underground, whereas in Louisiana, they're on the top of the ground. But anyhow, this is the Guadalupe River at Seguin, and it's got fantastic soil. And we put in an orchard there. And there was a fight between the daddy. The daddy is the man on the left. The son is a football quarterback, starting quarterback for UT. And him and his daddy were always butting heads on how. And I said, we need to plant the pecans. The minimum spacing for pecans is 35 feet. And the son is majoring in economics and a football quarterback at UT. And he got the worst thing ever happened, pocket calculator. Man, when Texas Instruments, you remember, Dave, when the first pocket calculators came out, it was really something. And man, everybody's got their little bitty Texas Instruments. You figure this, figure that, so everybody figured. So you start figuring the pounds per tree, pounds per acre, price per pounds, and do you plant them 30 feet apart? You know, that's 48 trees per acre, or you plant them 35 feet apart, and that's, 35 trees per acre. Texas A&M is recommending 35. These are UT people. They had a signal for Texas A&M. We planted, 48 trees. They planted them together. So we planted the 48 trees. Very important lesson for a young pecan specialist. Here's our production level. Of all the tables in my career, this is the most important table. 1973, 700 pounds per acre. 74, 1,400 pounds. 75, 4,000 pounds. And we're selling them at that time $1.25 a pound. This is for Choctaw. So anyhow, it was fantastic. And Kenneth, the economist's son, was just elated about how rich they were getting with selling these. Another thing we learned, I don't know if you were in our Sunday school class, Walter and I in the same Sunday school class here at the Baptist Church in College Station, but when I first started, I would take 100 pounds, those big old tow sack, not the little red bag, big old sack, to the Sunday school. And we had opened in church, Bill, they don't do that at the Methodist church, but at the Baptist, you open the bag, you got a scoop, and you're scooping out the pecans, and you're selling, getting the pecans. Then the people get to fighting for them, and then Jolene said, no more pecans at church. So anyhow, this is $4,000 per acre. Then the next year was not as much, 800. Then the next year was 3,800. 6 years, 0. So the moral of the story with pecans, and we learned this real early, if they crowd, they stop. It's not low production, it's no production. So what we're having to decide at the Texas A&M pecan orchard, we're 35 by 35, something, somewhere down the line, luckily for me, I got out and I don't have to make that, but somewhere down the line, half of the trees are going to have to go. Of course, there's something else came along after that. So here is FICO, and I worked closely with the owners of FICO in Tucson. They had me out there every year for a number of years. They planted not 30 by 30, 15 by 30. They want the money. And let me tell you, this orchard produced a ton of pecans, a lot of money in the 7th year. Now, they're going to have to take out the trees, so they painted them. The white trees go. Guess what happened? Didn't take them out, and they crowded. But they did eventually get to taking the trees out, and I've got some sequential photos here. Here they are, 3 thinnings later. They're at 60 by 60, and it's 40 years later. They're now planting a new orchard down the middle. And they're also, you can see the top of the tree, they're also hedging them. Okay. When you take, are you a horticulture student?
Yes, sir.
Okay, somewhere down the line, you'll take a fruit class or something, and they'll talk about fruit trees and growing trees from seed. There's a thing called juvenility. You plant a seed and you grow a seedling, then it's a juvenile. Juveniles do not have babies. Juvenile pecan trees do not have pecans. But then they reach adulthood when they're anywhere from age 7 to 20. Some trees begin bearing a lot earlier or whatever. So the problem is, in the old days, all pecan orchards were planted from seed. You had to wait all these years to get them. But we started grafting them. Now you get a pecan tree in production in like year 5, 6, or 7. And they go, this is adult growth. The deal is we take an adult bud and we go all the way down to the ground and we graft it onto a seedling only a foot above the ground. Then all the growth from 1 foot up is not juvenile. It's not a good, strong central leader tree. It's an adult. And I could make comparisons about, humans or other animals. But what we're saying is that it's not normal for a small tree to load up with pecans. So the big challenge for myself and the other people that we were working with is to work a system to where we could get adult wood into production without stressing the tree. And it was not an easy process, especially we had Bluford Hancock, we had Benton Story, and they said, this is the system we're using right here. Grow big, and Mike over at those last Choctaw trees we did at the back, we decided we're not going to train those trees. We're going to just let them go. We call it the let them go system and see what happens. On the other end, here's Mr. Gray was big. He owned the #1 pecan nursery in the state of Texas by this man here, Horace Gray. And he was big on, we got to get a lot of lateral shoots. If you get lateral shoots, you're in big one. So we want a lot of top and a lot of lateral shoots. Okay, now we'll come back to that. We want to talk about another family that I work with. Now, you guys don't know about this. If we had a blackboard, I'll just tell it to you. How many people know what the land grant? No. Would anyone, I don't want to ask everybody to raise their hands or whatever. Does anybody, I know Lineberger knows, I know Bill Welch knows, but I don't know if anybody else knows how the land grant, Abraham Lincoln in the Civil War, 1862, passed a bill called the Land Grant Bill, and we were going to put a college in every state, and that college would teach 2 things, agriculture and engineering. And every state got a college. Louisiana got LSU, Oklahoma got Oklahoma State, Texas got Texas A&M. We are different from all other colleges in that we concentrate on agriculture and engineering. Now, they not only said that, about 10 years later, they said, we don't know how to grow pecan. So we're going to create what is called an experiment station. And we call it the Texas Agricultural Experiment Station. That started in 1890. And so we hired a bunch of people at College Station to learn how to grow cows, how to grow rice, how to grow corn, how to grow cotton, how to grow pecans. And these were scientists. They didn't have meetings. They just learned the science of growing those crops. So that's real good, but the information was not moving from the scientists to the growers. They said, well, we need to hire a bunch of people that are good talkers, they have good personality, have good people skills, to take the information from the experiment station and give it to the growers. And that was called the Extension Service. Until recently, all 3 of those agencies were separate, and you didn't like each other. The teaching people did their thing, the research people did their thing, and the Extension Service did their thing. And the Extension people get together, they would say all this nasty stuff about how uneducated the research guys, and the research guys, can you believe what the Extension people are saying? It was just the way the deal was. But anyhow, we have an agency at Texas A&M called the Texas Agricultural Extension Service. I worked for it for my entire career, and their goal was to help growers learn how to grow. And we put in East Texas Pecan Improvement Demonstration. And I'm telling, the county agent worked at that just like it was his property. The wife worked. She spent as many hours on the tractor as the husband did, and the husband worked. And I knew when I walked in their barn, and every tool was in the right place, and it was immaculate. I said, they're organized. We can make it with these. And sure enough, they turned out to be first-class cooperators. Got to move on, so if I go much further, I'll start crying. So here they are, a picture of them. Okay, we're going to come back to them a little later. I'm not as, this is not as sequential as I thought it'd be. Now I want to talk about George Ray McEachern before and after. The way things were before and the way things after we started working on. When I moved to Texas, the tree trunk on the left of the man with the pipe's head. You see that tree trunk? That's what Bluford Hancock and Benton Story said. That's the way we grow pecan. Now, Warren Meadows, I don't think Bill, you remember Warren Meadows. Bill's the only one that remember. Warren Meadows says, no, you don't do it that way. You decapitate. So here I am, a young kid coming over here to Texas, and I had a conflict. So what did we do? We went in and put test plots in. We put it in with Hal Berdahl. We put it in with Glenn Huddleston at Palestine. We put it in with Gary Schmitzy down at Pearsall. And you wouldn't believe that going in and decapitating a tree and selecting only one trunk produced more pecans at year 7 than the let them go system. But it did, and so fortunately for me, it worked out good. And it was caught on. This is Mark Goodyear in Georgia. So I would say within 10 years, the entire pecan industry from growing to let them grow trees to now everybody is cut back and select, cut back and select. And you did it 3 times. Okay, now this is when the trees crowd, we did not have hedging in the old days. And we had to take all half the trees out, then 75%. But when mechanical hedging came in about 30 years ago now, it allowed us to keep trees planted close. We did realize, we meaning the entire pecan industry, did finally learn that 30-30 is too close, even 35 by 35. So the standard spacing now in the pecan industry is 42 feet. 45 was too far, 35 was too close. So 42 feet is the standard spacing for pecans now. And when the trees begin to touch in the middle, we go in with a machine and we hedge them. So we're producing the pecans in a hedgerow-like situation. If you don't fix a multiple, when you let them go, invariably there's included bark and the trees split out. And we're not saying that it'll happen some of the time. It would happen most of the time. So if you didn't have the cut back and select, what you had to do is go in and just go to one trunk. Then this is a life-changing experience, Roundup herbicide. Roundup became the #1 agricultural chemical in the world. And they've had some bad press and just had some. In the last 10 years, we've had people dying from leukemia induced by Roundup. So Roundup is getting some bad press. But I'm here to tell you, when Roundup came out, it was the real deal. And I was fortunate enough to be the first person, maybe in the nation, but it's definitely the first person in the South. 2 men from Monsanto came to they came to Dr. Story with this Erlenmeyer flask with the chemical in it and a cork in it and a little ribbon and a little white tag. And Benton, it was a bad day at the office. He was worked on, and he said, listen, I don't have time to mess with that. He said, we've got a young guy down the hall. He says, why don't you just go give him that new chemical? And it was, you're right, it was earth-shattering. It changed our life. Roundup exploded. 1 year I put out, like I told you before, 30 cases. of Roundup in 1 year. And let me tell you, the thing about Roundup, it was a herbicide. When you sprayed it on anything, it killed it. So number one, it works. The number two thing is when it got an inch into the soil, bacteria broke it down and there's zero environmental impact. So we had and the joke was, oh, you need some hand soap? If you have Roundup, no problem. Well, of course, nobody's going to use Roundup herbicide, but it was a soap. It was real soapy, you could do, but what they were saying is it was that safe. So we had a safe product, no environmental impact, and it worked. Of course, the problem was if you spray it on a pecan tree, and we did research on that too. Now, the next question is you go up to a pecan grower and say, hey, Southern Weldon, we got a new chemical. It may be toxic to pecans. Would you allow us to see if it'll kill your pecan trees? And of course, that guy don't want to work there. But finally, grocery store at San Antonio said, well, we have some pecan trees on the banks of the Guadalupe that the river is falling in. We're going to lose the trees anyway. So they volunteered to let us have some giant big trees. And we went down with a cattle sprayer and we sprayed them. It killed them. So we knew it was a hot deal, but it did work. And I had, this is not the picture. I had a sprayer that I pulled behind the A&M pickup over 100,000 miles. I put 3 sets of tires on this herbicide rig, hauling it all over Texas, showing the county agents and the pecan growers how to kill grass with Roundup. What's the problem with Roundup? Resistance. We had some weeds about 10 or 15 years ago started, you spray Roundup on them and they had resistance, and then we no longer have Roundup the way it was before. Big part of your life, pecan shows. That man with the cowboy hat was our ringleader in the South, and we even had the Catholic Church on our side. Father Victor Smitzinski was a big promoter of pecan shows, but it caught on. But we had one man in Ag Eco, the man with the cowboy hat, named Robert Kensing. And he just decided he's going to make that his life goal, his career program of choice. And so here we have a man, not even in horticulture, taking a horticulture program and growing it in. So we went from 1 county show to 10 county shows. We got as high as 60 county shows, 3 regional shows, and the state pecan show. And they have a little bitty saying in Louisiana. Louisiana has, I'm from Louisiana, they have some words that you can't spell. I don't know. And one of the words that they use is called a duh. And they ask you a question and you just say, duh. It's basically, I don't know. And so anyhow, Mr. Kensing ended up the head pecan show man. And we appreciate it. We appreciate all he did for us. We hated that he didn't make it as an economist, but he ended up a fantastic pecan guy. Okay, the variety on the left is the variety in the East, and there's one variety in the West. So the standard variety is set. The next question is, what are the new varieties? And we tested over the years, I don't know how many, 50 plus different pecan varieties, but the best place to evaluate them, and Monty Nesbitt runs the pecan show program now, the very best way to evaluate pecans are in county pecan shows. People are doing all the work, they're bringing in the pecans, you line them up side by side, you do the statistics on them, you measure them, you do the color, you do all the stats, and you select a winner. A duh is, if this pecan keeps winning grand champion, in Louisiana, if it became very obvious that they just say, duh. So the question is, it gave us an opportunity to find the very best pecans. So Desirable is really good. Western is good in the West. Sioux is good. And we have a new pecan called Kansas. It's good. And Monty you can ask Monty, he will tell you the results of the Pecan Show program, which ones are the outstanding ones. I've been out of the loop for a while now. Can't say that. Now, totally different deal. I came here in 1969. In about 1974, Dr. Story started a program where he selected 10 county agents to come to campus, and for one day, he would tell these county agents how to grow pecan. So it went on for 74, 75, about 1976. The growers got in touch with Dr. Story. Dr. Story, can I bring one pecan grower with me? So instead of just the agent coming, he's bringing a grower. So now it's 2 people. And Benton said, no problem. Well, it didn't take too long. You know, a county agent was saying, can I bring 2? So we had an educational system that was working, but we needed a system to handle more than 21 people. And so we started what is known as the Texas Pecan Orchard Management Short Course, or the nickname for it is just Pecan Short Course, and it took off. And it has done tremendous. And another thing that was, I guess, more or less a part of the success, you charge the people a very low amount of money to participate, like $50. And it's 3 days or a week, whatever it was for different points. But these $50, you multiply it times 50, you know, that's quite a bit of money. And then you bring it to $75, you bring it to $100, you bring it to $200, and you start realizing that you've got a generating from. The other thing about the Pecan Short Course is you publish the speeches. So we started asking each person at the Pecan Short Course to give us a manuscript. No photograph, just black and white page, you know, typed out manuscript about your speech. And we started publishing it in the Pecan Handbook. Well, we were selling the Pecan Handbook for $3, then we're selling the Pecan Handbook for $5, then we're selling the Pecan Handbook for $10, then you're selling it for $20. And guess what? Dorothy calls over to the systems building and says, well, how much money is the Pecan Short Course? So much. How much is that with the handbook? So much. We're not talking little money. We're talking about $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 are accumulating after we paid all of our bills. So we were able to buy things for the. Only Dorothy and I know I bought all the coffee on the second floor of the horticulture building for 35 years. Well, no, I didn't buy it. Dorothy does, but she bought it from the Pecan Short Course. Guess what happened? They came out with those little bitty things you stick in to make a cup of coffee. Dorothy drew like, we're not buying those. If they want that coffee, they got to buy their own. So we no more free coffee in horticulture. But it was good while it lasted. But anyway, we educated people all over the world. South Africa, Israel, Mexico. The most we ever had, one time we had 60 attendees at the Texas Pecan Short Course from Mexico. So it was an educational instrument, but was also a way to make money. This happened for a few times. This is all the pecan scientists in the United States. We had 25 of us, and we met once every 3 years. Now, I don't know, do the peach people for the South get together? We don't do that anymore for pecans. We don't do that for anymore. But it was a good deal. We met for a couple of days. We had good food, had good conversation. But every person would just stand up and say, well, I'm from Oklahoma. Here's what's happening in Oklahoma. I'm from Texas. Here's what. And it was a good way of sharing what you were doing. See those purple caps? Been late. Fantastic, we thought. Been late exploded across the United States for the control of fungi on all horticultural crops. Big problem, synthetic fungicide. Big problem. You didn't know the problem in the beginning. It controls 99.9% of the fungi. But that 0.1%, you're smiling, that she's a pathologist, that's what the deal, it did not control. And it proliferated, and it proliferated. And guess what? Finley doesn't touch it, and it explodes on them. So we have to come out with a more stronger fungicide. And then it isolates. So over sequential isolation, a disease that used to be only kind of bad has now become a nightmare. In the beginning, when Dr. McEachern moved to the state of Texas, we never sprayed a fungicide. None. We now have growers in San Saba, central to West Texas, the spraying fungicides 5 times a year because we isolated superior strains of scab. Okay, now we're talking about Mexico. That's Carlos Sanchez there on the right, the sunglasses here. Oh, well, that's not it. I'll come back to him a little bit. Anyhow, the first pecan meeting I went to was the first year I was in, the second year I was in Texas. In 1974, we went to Hermosillo and we had a pecan meeting down there in Mexico, and fantastic. Oh, we love doing pecan conferences in Mexico. They pay all of your expenses, they pay all of your meals, first class wholesale, all your transportation. And then as you're leaving, they hand you an envelope and they start counting out the $100 bills. 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. Now you would think that your wife was opposed to that until she found out. Then it's no longer a problem, they just kept. So we did this for a long period of time. We'd go to Mexico. And then the Texas Farm Bureau came to Texas A&M and said, Mexico is increasing acreage and production. And guess what? Mexico exceeded not only Texas, but the entire United States production because they were selling in China, had a straight cash flow. But anyhow, the Farm Bureau and the Texas Department of Agriculture met with the dean, and all the pecan people met in the horticulture building over in the plant science building. And says, we want Texas A&M to stop helping Mexico. And Neville Clark was the director of the experiment station, and he was there, and he said, I'm sorry, but Texas A&M is a land-grant institution, and we're here to help anybody that wants to grow a commodity. And he says, Farm Bureau, you can take it. We're helping Mexico. So we just kept on helping Mexico. And you know the story now, they blew us away in production. This is JoJo and our first trip to Mexico. I work with this man every year. The #1 pecan orchard in the world was in Mexico. And guess what the spacing was? 60 by 60. Now some other stuff that I've done. This may seem like a trivial deal, but I came up with a way to evaluate. Can I grow? The question is, can I grow pecan? I don't know if you can grow pecans or not. So they said, so what you do is you just go in here and you dig a hole. Bluford was, you fill the hole. I said, we need a better deal. So I came up with this test. And you dig a hole 32 inches deep, 8 inches wide. You fill it up with 7 gallons of water. If the hole is empty in 1 hour, you can grow pecan. Back to Louisiana. Oh, duh. Anybody can figure that. Suppose you fill the hole up with water, you come back in an hour and it's gone down 1 inch. Guess what? You can't grow pecan. So it's not a high-tech deal, but it was the kind of thing that anybody could do, and it caught on, and maybe one of the most important things I ever developed in my career. Now I want to talk about the A&M pecan orchard. This is students. We planted 17 acres, what we call now not the ones at the front. Larry and I did that orchard, but we call the young orchard. This is the young orchard. We planted the young orchard. I think it's about 12 years old now. And of course, We later came back and the Bryson Orchard and we planted pecan trees there. I had a hobby, building barns. I have built somewhere between 5 or 7 barns. I don't know. And you don't measure. Somebody said, well, how did you measure? I said, well, you don't measure. He said, what do you do? I said, you put the post in the ground, you put the boards up, you nail the tin on, you got a barn. And he said, well, if it doesn't come out right, what do you do? I said, we nail it. If it does, you cover it with tin and you nail it. So this was, we built this little barn, Basil Savage, the pecan man in Oklahoma, I told him we needed a logo for the top. So he built that logo for us and it works good. And that's a picture of Basil. He invented the pecan tree shaker, which is, I'm going to run out of time and never get a third of the way through. But anyhow, this shaker has 2 weights. And when the weights are directly across from each other and they spin, it just sits there. They're on a chain and on a socket. If you change it 1 link off, it still goes, but it's got this little bit of shake. And that's how he invented the pecan shaker. And that's how simple it is. And he went on. By the way, he came to Texas A&M to major in agricultural engineering. And the dean, the head of the department said, Mr. Savage, if you come up here, we'll mess you up. You go back to Oklahoma and keep on making stuff. So he made the shaker, here's Mike, he made the harvester, he made the cleaner, the piece of equipment on the right. And by the way, the young lady there, the pecan orchard is not, prejudicial. One of the best hands we ever had at the Texas A&M Pecan Orchard was Mandy Johnson. She was a really, really good worker. And then he had the sprayer. And then, of course, we bought a tractor. And here's the big thing, the white thing you see in the back, that's an automatic pecan cracker where it gives you, the kernels come out on the table. And we bought all of that, no telling how much money we paid. And listen, Mr. Savage he knew we was selling stuff. So the price we got was not what those people were paying. Here's Mike. In 2018, we were at the Texas A&M Pecan Orchard. We produced 20,000 pounds. I know what we did in dollars, not pounds. And I think the highest we ever got was $46,000 one year from the Texas A&M Pecan Orchard. So the big question is if we're going to continue to have that much income. Okay, another thing I did, this is Pecan Growers wrote me a letter. I wrote 396 monthly articles for Pecan South magazine. I wrote Growing Grapes in Texas, published this book, Fruit Growers. This book is still available online, eBay. I looked last night, $225 if you want to. Okay, we want to talk about grapes a little. I started working with Valverde Winery in Del Rio. We set up the first vinifera vineyard in Texas with Ed Aller at Tao, Texas. Messina Hoff got in the mix. We brought in H.P. Olmo from Davis, and he said, you can't grow vinifera in Texas, but he didn't know about Lubbock. And we have the St. Genevieve at Fort Stockton. We hired this guy, the state of Texas hired this Andre Bernabe. This man is from France, came to manage St. Genevieve. And let me tell you, he turned it around, made it into, when UT gave it up and, the Texas legislature told University of Texas they couldn't own a vineyard. They said, well, we'll give it to Texas A&M. Is that the same difference? They can't own a vineyard either. So they sold it, went private. That's when the vineyard really started. And that man went to work there, went to really paying off. This is Grayson County College. I taught 3 viticulture courses, Wines of the World, Viticulture 1, Viticulture 2. In addition to Texas A&M, I taught at Grayson County for 21 years. The good thing about teaching at Grayson County, I had 1 young student in 21 years. Not all the students were full-grown adults. And I'll tell you, teaching a class of adults is a lot better than teaching a class. They want to learn. It's different from teaching students. This is a terrible deal. We, Dr. Limburger, we have a bad thing. We do not have a photograph of Gay Platt. And she gave us the wine lab over here.
I have a whole album of photographs.
Oh, when they did the, okay, I see, I didn't have, I'll need to get I need a photograph of Gay Platt so we can tell people all that she's done for us. But she was the real deal. We did have a problem with Gay Platt. She tripped on her rug, fell, bumped her head, called her friend and said, I tripped on the rug, I bumped my head, I'm going to sleep it off tonight. If I feel bad in the morning, I'm going to call the doctor. Guess what happened? She died that night. So one of our greatest supporters of all time passed away prematurely. Had a bunch of graduate students. This is Sue Wilson. Oh, by the way, she did her master's on viticulture with us here. This is Penny Adams. She did her master's degree at Fresno State, but did all the work. And I was on her committee at Fresno State, and she did all of that here. She did a real good deal on her master's thesis. We had people trying to build the whole cordon in 1 year. That was too much cordon. Then they had a short cordon. That was too slow. She did a short, medium, and long. And her master's thesis, it showed you build a cordon in 2 years, and it's a better system. We had Dr. Larry Stein as a student. He also was a horticulturist at Stephenville, Texas. And we put in a test up there of new varieties, and we came up with a grape called, or he came up with a grape called Victoria. This is Dr. Stein. I had another student. This is Ben Anthony, who is a member of the Leonard family. And he helped a tremendous year over there. He developed this machine, the only one in the world that you put chocolate coating on pecan. And let me tell you, it worked good. And he has sold all of the pecan corporation, but he kept this one unit here. They're going to continue to sell pecan chocolate coated. This is A&M Pecan Vineyard over on the Hill Farm. When I used to teach a viticulture class, it was perfect. We're leaf pruning here. It's real good, real handy. There is a little ag community south of town called Cat Spring. And this man put together a wine and viticulture meeting at Cat Spring called Cat Spring Wine Society. And I don't know, we have anywhere 50 to 100 people go to there every year for, Mike knows about have a wine meeting there. The man on the far left is Buddy Hagner. He's done a tremendous amount for us. He helps us with funding. This is Dr. Stein when we started out on herbicides. This is Dr. Gerald Johnson. Got a few more pictures and it's over. I had 4 tours of other parts of the world. I said there's no reason for us to tour grapes in California. California's California. So this is the first one. We went to Burgundy. We went to Montrachet, the #1 Chardonnay vineyard in the world. And we have a professor there show us how to prune. The next 4 years later, we went to Bordeaux. We were at Mouton Rothschild, went to Chateau Margaux. All fine dining. It was not a low-end short course. You had to wear a coat and tie all the time. And that's me at the #1 winery in the world named Chateau Yquem. Then the next year we went, this is Cabernet in Bordeaux. This is Cabernet Franc in Bordeaux. And then the next year we went to Italy. And this is Sangiovese in Italy. And then the last year we did Alsace in, in Rhone Valley. So we had 32 people. Now there was a limit of 32 people for each of these short courses in Europe because you can only put 32 people in a bus. Now at the end, we had people renting a car and driving behind the bus. They wanted to go, but anyhow, that's the way those short courses. This is in Switzerland. Okay, we're getting toward the end of the deal. I don't know how much time the party's over. Got 1 minute or whatever. Anyhow, this is the lab upstairs. This is room 120 or whatever the lab room is, and this is putting together the wine tastings. This is one wine tasting that we were doing at A&M. We did the same wine tasting at Grayson County College. We did 10 reds and we did 10 whites at 3 locations for 31 years. So well over 1,000 wines that we evaluated in your career, all with a scorecard from UC Davis. And I still have the scorecards, but my scorecards, the students kept their own scorecards. But if you ask me where they're at, I don't know if I could, for $1,000, I don't know if I could deliver them for you. A little bit on peaches at Mahia, peaches at Fredericksburg. Jolene and I have had 3 or 4 commercial peach orchards. I only worked peaches a very short period of time because it was a period in time when the extension service, and poor Monty, he's doing the whole deal by himself. We had a pecan grape specialist, then we had a fruit specialist that did peaches. But there was a little spot about 10 years where I had to do peaches, and it was a lot of fun. We enjoyed working. Did work on iron chlorosis. Now, what do you do with the rest of your life? Well, Walter is smiling. Walter and I want to cry when I do. Walter and I, many years, starting in 2008, go to Alaska for a week to 10 days. And it's been a fantastic deal. We photograph eagles, we photograph bears and that kind of stuff. And it's been a good run. Anyhow, it's been a miracle has occurred. I only went over 2 minutes. So I don't know if any of y'all want to ask questions, I'll hang around. We're not going anywhere. So thanks a lot. You're beautiful.